And I want to thank the commissioner and the officers that are here for the work that they do each and every day to keep New Yorkers safe.
Right now we're here to visit the memorial and honor the legacy of service that so many of our officers have left, and I'm sure there will be plenty of time to discuss all of that, but I really want to leave politics out of today's discussion.
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One's investigative reporter, Courtney Gross. As expected, Mayor-elect Mamdani has appointed Jessica Tisch as his police commissioner, meaning she will stay on the job, perhaps appeasing some of his critics. The news comes as Mamdani is scheduled to meet with President Donald Trump on Friday. And then next, we will go into a possible, well, we shouldn't say possible, a preview of the midterm elections. We are seeing a progressive city council member, Ossé, file paperwork to challenge the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. This is one of many races that we're going to be keeping our eyes on. Bobby Cuza?
Eyes on. It's going to be fun. Midterm election cycle.
I'm like not done with the hangover of this election. I need a holiday and Thanksgiving and, the holiday period to rest and sleep. I'm not really ready to go into what's going to happen next year, but that's fine. Ayana Harry's also here.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So let's just jump right in and talk about Tisch. As expected, we were anticipating this announcement. We were thinking it was going to be this week. And then, of course, on Wednesday, we find out through a statement that he's going to be keeping on Jessica Tisch. Then they have this brief kind of walkabout. The police memorial is in Lower Manhattan, I believe it's in Lower Manhattan.
Battery Park City.
Ayana, you were there.
Yes.
So I forgot that you were the one that was there. So what was the vibe?
We don't agree on everything, but we're going to work together. That's really, they didn't say much at that moment, but that was overall what they were seeming to focus on. And Mamdani did lean into one of the areas where they agree upon. He's saying that they both do want to see a Department of Community Safety in New York City. They both feel that New York City police officers are overburdened with responding to calls that aren't really about crime, but are more about the mental health crisis or the homelessness crisis. And so he says they are aligned in sort of taking some of this work off of the backs of the NYPD, placing these responsibilities on other organizations, sounds like mostly the Department of Community Safety, and supporting police officers in doing the work that they signed up to initially do.
But they didn't want to say much yesterday, right? I mean, when there's a few reporters, and when somebody asked Tisch about their disagreement, she said, well, today's not about politics, right? And I think it was
not be about.
But I mean, I thought it was smart. It sounded like maybe it was Mamdani's idea to have this event at this police memorial.
Yeah.
Because, obviously this is symbolic and shows that he has respect for the work of police officers and the sacrifices that they've made. Of course, the backdrop to all of this being the things that he has said in the past about police, about defunding police and dismantling the NYPD and
racist, et cetera.
Yeah, et cetera, et cetera. And so obviously people have been very skeptical about how he's going to run the NYPD. And, I think there's been some fear mongering as to whether crime is going to go up and he's going to open up the jails and not prosecute misdemeanors and legalize prostitution. So, clearly that's not happening. I think that became even more clear when he appointed Jessica Tisch. But yesterday, I think, was even went a step further with the symbolism to try to show that he respects and, respects the sacrifice that officers have made and the commitment they make every day.
It is fascinating to me, going back to what Ayana was talking about with the Department of Community Safety, because this was obviously a pillar of the Mamdani criminal justice agenda when he was running for mayor, saying that he's going to take this 200,000 volume of mental health calls that 911 gets on a yearly basis and say that cops may no longer be responding to these calls. I just thought it was going to be such a huge point of resistance from the brass at NYPD and One Police Plaza. And I just find it so hard to believe that they're just going to hand over all of those incidents to mental health workers. We've seen such struggle in the way the mental health program, there is it's not a pilot program anymore. It's actually implemented where there's Be Heard teams, that's what it's called, where mental health workers respond to some of these calls in parts of the city. But it's been deemed somewhat, I don't know if I want to use the word unsuccessful, but I'll say challenged, both fiscally and physically. There hasn't been enough teams to respond to people. It's just really surprising that the NYPD would just kind of give up that territory.
Well, we don't know what they've agreed to in terms of what the Department of Community Safety will actually look like. So you can both say, yes, we agree that we should have this department, but then when it'll come down to the actual planning and implementation, it'll be interesting to see if what Mamdani described on the campaign trail is what will come to life, or if there's going to be an actual gap. As I think, some of his supporters are beginning to notice and see a gap between, the big, bold, progressive public safety ideas that he had out on the campaign trail, and then continuing with the same police commissioner who, people seem very hesitant to publicly criticize Jessica Tisch. I don't know if it's because she comes from a very prominent and powerful family. I don't know.
Wealthy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to get in trouble after this podcast, But there is some very real criticism of her, particularly when it comes to holding police officers accountable for misconduct. And, some folks are disappointed in Mamdani and choosing to go with her. And, he promised a fresh new direction. She is more of what was the same, literally. And so I think that's going to be fascinating. I think folks aren't publicly expressing a lot of their disappointment because they want to stay on his good side, right? So this is the kind of thing where people will talk to me about it, openly, and then I'm like, okay, so can we do an interview and talk about it? And then they either say no, or then the interview becomes like a word salad. That's not what you were just saying last week about.
Well, I was going to ask you. I mean, I don't want you to call people out, but I'm wondering who those people are, because it seems like across the board and across the political spectrum, everybody is just gushing about Jessica Tisch, right? I mean, the Democrats, Kathy Hochul, Tish James, and then Republicans. I mean, we had Nicole Maliotakis on New York One on Wednesday. She's talking about what a great move this was. It's like universal adulation for Jessica Tisch, and she's only been on the job for a year.
One year.
But you're saying,
I think it was a year ago today. Well, that we're taping that the mayor announced that she.
I mean, obviously, it's people further on the left that are disappointed in this decision. Right?
But also now hesitant to speak publicly, critically of I'm talking about, I think you can look at some council members on the left and look at policing issues over the last few months, and some council members have been vocally critical of the police commissioner and how the NYPD handled, or interacted with the federal government over those Canal Street raids, over police accountability issues. We've seen, some high-profile cases. Alan Feliz, they're still calling for a disciplinary trial in the case of Wayne Isaacs, who shot Delron Small on video, and people have called her out by name. And then it's like she's picked by Mamdani, and all of a sudden that criticism gets really quiet. And I think in part people don't want to go against Mamdani. People want to keep a good relationship, and so don't want to be seen as publicly criticizing him or her. But behind the scenes, what I am hearing is some concern that this is not what we thought we were getting from you in terms of public safety.
But then there's the quote unquote establishment that was pushing Jessica Tisch, right, for all these months.
Orchestrated. Do we say orchestrated? I mean, over the summer, how many meetings were, I feel like at least the Times reported that the endorsement of Hochul of Mamdani was almost contingent upon the fact that he kept Jessica Tisch in her position as police commissioner. And they met multiple times, I guess, over the summer related to this issue. And the idea from the Hochul administration, at least in part, is that having her at the helm of the NYPD would potentially keep troops, border patrol, whatever the Trump administration would be cooking up off of New York City streets.
But that didn't work with the Canal Street raid. So, I don't fully understand all of the praise for Jessica Tisch. And I think that there's certainly some metrics that we can look at within the NYPD where things are working. But I don't think that I don't know if the praise is proportional to the results that she's delivered.
I think what happened too is when she came in, we had just seen all this corruption, or at least alleged corruption, at the NYPD under Mayor Adams. So then Mayor Adams brings her in, and she immediately cleans house. So
how much cleaning house did she actually do?
Correct. And yes.
She did. She eliminated, she got rid of people. She reassigned people. And then, we saw people like, I'm forgetting the timeline now, but we saw people like Jeffrey Madry leave the department.
I guess I just want to see a list of names of all the people that lost their jobs under her.
Then, pretty quickly became clear that, she's not exactly progressive on policing issues, right? I mean, she came out and criticized bail reform and raised the age and discovery reform, and she's really pushed enforcement of quality of life crimes, which, however you feel about that stuff, that is not the progressive stance on policing. So
yes, but also, like, again, I'm still wondering, like, where are the results? Because I hear from neighborhoods where those Q teams were rolled out. Like, it was great at the beginning, and then a few weeks later, nobody saw them again.
Yeah.
Like, Roosevelt Avenue keeps getting cleaned up for a little bit, and then you go back with our cameras a month later, and all of the prostitution is back. So I guess I'm not fully seeing
the results.
I get it, and I give her some credit for sure for certainly helping to root out some of that corruption at the highest levels of the NYPD. But it just, like, to make it seem like you're not going to endorse Mamdani unless he keeps her on, like, it just seems like there's a lot of love for her. And maybe she's just done a great job in building relationships and having people who can go to bat for her. But I do think Mamdani, in picking her and choosing that, does risk alienating people who voted for him because they wanted something different, in particular when it comes to public safety, because Mamdani himself wanted something different and spoke very publicly about that.
But I wonder if those people won't get as pissed because as long as his affordability agenda gets approved, they'll put the policing issues on the side and say, if you give me a rent freeze and the free bus and the child care, like, those were the tenets of your platform. And we all know about the Department of Community Safety, but I wonder if the other people do.
But like you said, this also appeases the skeptics, right? I mean, that was a big part of this because he didn't commit to Jessica Tisch before the primary. It was after the primary when he's trying to win the general election that he announces he's going to keep her. And, he recognized that after he won the primary, not only did he have to win the general election, but he needs people to buy in, and he needs to build a coalition, and he needs to win over some of these skeptics if he's going to be a successful mayor. So that's why he was meeting with business leaders and meeting with people who didn't necessarily agree with his politics. And, I interviewed Kathy Wild, who's the head of the New York City Partnership for New York City, on Wednesday. And she brokered a lot of these meetings with business leaders. And she said every single meeting, Jessica Tisch came up. Like, that was a top priority of people.
Because her family's she's a billionaire.
Right. But also,
she
people
knows all these business.
Yes.
Right, but what she said, would her name still have come up if her last name wasn't Tisch?
Yeah.
Well,
Would there still be this much pulling for her and support for her if this was somebody else?
Right.
There's a Trump connection too. Yeah, because, like, I feel like Trump might. I mean, he's not a billionaire, right? But
Trump?
Yeah.
He might be a billionaire now.
No, actually, after all of the memes and all that. So he is a wealthy individual associated with other wealthy individuals. And I think the thought, maybe from Hochul's perspective, is that just based upon that alone, she is going to have more of a sway over the Trump administration than perhaps somebody else, just because they come from the same so-called class. You were with Mamdani, to pivot quickly, this morning.
Yeah.
And there are so many issues, and we've talked about, we've mentioned this, but there are so many issues where they aren't aligned, Tisch and Mamdani. Listing them. SRG.
We can spend a while.
Yeah, I can get on reading the SRG, the Strategic Response Group, which polices, kind of major incidents as well as protests, demonstrations, et cetera.
CCRB.
Mamdani said that he wanted to empower the CCRB to actually discipline officers, which they can't now. They just recommend, and then the commissioner usually says, sorry, no.
Right.
We talked about the Community Safety Department. What else was
Well, I mean,
where are the other differences?
The gang database is another big one, which Mamdani has talked about getting rid of. And then, all the stuff I mentioned earlier with bail reform and raise the age and discovery reform. But what was fascinating on Thursday morning when Mamdani held this, he had a Q&A with reporters, and he got a lot of questions about Tisch. And he really started sounding like he's giving her a long leash.
I think that these are disagreements that are actually signs of a healthy relationship. And I mean that in that too often mayors and leaders are looking to surround themselves with people who are characterized by the quickness with which they can say yes, as opposed to the quickness with which they can tell you their honest opinion.
Or maybe no leash at all. Like, he's just kind of deferring to her on a lot of this stuff. I mean, he said they're disagreements that are actually signs of a healthy relationship because, she's going to be this like truth teller and tell him what she really thinks and not just be, not just say yes. And he said he's not looking to micromanage everybody who works for him.
People who stand up to you and don't just be yes people.
But then he was asked
you as the
specifically,
mayor, and it's your vision, right? And the people that you hire and have as part of your team, they are all supposed to be aligned with your vision, excited about your vision, and helping to build towards your vision of New York City. Now I feel like his vision is starting to get watered down.
I was going to say, this weaken him somehow politically.
Right. And so, okay, it starts with policing. And then are you going to it started with, Hochul saying, I don't know if I'm going to tax the rich. Oh, okay. Like how much more of your signature policies will continue to get watered down to the point where people feel like this is not what I thought we were getting. I thought we were getting a breath of fresh air. And you got the power and you capitulated to the powerful when this whole campaign was supposed to be about empowering the people.
And I wondered if there was a negotiation. I mean, I have no idea what the conversations were like between Jessica Tisch and Mamdani, but I wonder if there's a negotiation, right? If the Department of Community Safety is something the NYPD will, be flexible on, but on these other issues, whether the police commissioner is going to have disciplinary authority, maybe they're not, Jessica Tisch is going to draw a line.
Or say, I'll give you the Department of Community Safety, let me keep SRG, there's just so many.
Yeah.
Right, but then who's the boss?
Yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be the boss, yeah.
But, Bill Bratton, you interviewed Bill Bratton a couple weeks ago, and I watched the interview you did with him, and he said, it was a very, very similar dynamic in 2013 when Bill de Blasio was elected. I keep talking about this. Like, it was the exact same thing. Bill de Blasio came in, everybody thought he was this crazy progressive who was going to, disband the NYPD, because remember, he ran on ending stop and frisk. Yeah. And so he came in, and then he appointed Bill Bratton, who is not aligned.
Quality of life policing, broken windows policing.
And he was like,
opposite of that.
This hailed as this crime fighter. Like, he was not aligned with de Blasio at all. But it was the same thing. De Blasio wanted to bring in a commissioner who would kind of calm people's nerves about policing and whether crime was going to go up. But then Bratton told you that de Blasio didn't interfere. Like, he let him pick his own commanders, and they didn't have any disagreements. So it was a similar dynamic then. I mean, I'm not going to say it worked out great because, de Blasio, it didn't shield de Blasio from getting criticism from cops.
He did continue to fulfill his promise of reducing dramatically.
Stop and frisk.
Yes, from 100,000 under Bloomberg to what? And I think at the end of de Blasio years, there was a couple thousand.
And crime went down. Crime continued to go down
significantly
during those years. But de Blasio, was not beloved by rank and file police officers, to say the least. So it's not like that shielded him entirely from criticism just because he had Bratton there.
So before we move on to the second part of our podcast and our midterm discussion, we should mention we are taping on Thursday, so the meeting will be happening on Friday. Mamdani is expected to go down to Washington, D.C., and meet with the president on Friday. I don't know if we should talk about expectations, but I guess this is another, I don't want to say, is it a compromise? Because I'm probably of the mindset where the mayor should be meeting with the president. And I imagine maybe this meeting could piss off some of his base by the fact that he's going to meet with Trump. But why is he saying he's meeting with him?
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, he said he reached out to the White House. His team reached out to the White House, and that it's customary for a mayor-elect to meet with the White House, which may be true. But I mean, let's see what happens, because people might be listening to this podcast after the meeting has happened. Yeah. But I mean, are we going to have like a Zelensky type situation in the in the Oval Office?
Him up like a pawn.
So this could be something dramatic or not. Maybe we don't know at this point if there's even going to be cameras allowed into the meeting. Is it closed? Is it closed doors?
There's definitely going to be cameras in them.
So
they'll meet behind closed doors for a little bit, and then they'll let the cameras in, and there'll be a few questions. And yeah, I think it could go so many different ways. So we kind of just have to wait and see what actually happens.
Okay. By the way, Jessica Tisch should have just run for mayor this year.
A lot of people wanted her to.
She would have had to run against her boss, though. Yeah. Because Adams was still running at the time. But she might have a chance.
Well, it's her name in the public profile if she does actually harbor those political ambitions, even though she always says she doesn't want to talk about politics. But for now, let's put the politics on hold. We're going to take a short break. Our YouTube listeners, stick with us. Podcast listeners, you get a break, and then we're going to talk about the midterms.
Councilman Ossé filed paperwork today to run against you to represent Brooklyn. He has said that Democratic leadership has failed to effectively fight against President Donald Trump. What's your response?
Come on in, the water is warm.
I can confirm to you the things that I've actually said and the things that I've actually done. And last night, I spoke to DSA members, sharing the same message that I've shared in public as well, which is that I do not believe this is the right time to wage this primary.
Okay, so Ossé, some of our listeners and watchers will probably be familiar with him, whether it's his prolific social media and TikTok videos, or, he's just kind of one of those guys that's out there making a bit of waves, amongst Democratic politics. And he filed papers this week.
Yeah, on Monday.
Let's go. Monday?
Yeah.
I don't know what day it is anymore. It's Thursday because we're taking the podcast. He filed papers this week to challenge Hakeem Jeffries for Congress in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Bobby Cuza has been covering this. Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So wow.
But can I just also just say,
How old
this
is
is
he?
gonna, is he 20?
I think he's 26 or 27.
He's doing-
But this is going to be a wild election cycle. I mean, everybody's talking about the midterms nationally. There's a lot of attention on the midterms in November because the control of the House is at stake. But the primary, the Democratic primary in June, I mean, we have Ossé potentially running against Hakeem, although he could, conceively still call that off.
Yes.
You've got, a challenge to,
right?
I got to lose track of all the numbers. You have Richie Torres. You have Michael Blake running against Richie Torres. You might have Brad Lander running against Dan Goldman,
And everybody running against everybody.
Yeah.
Let's see.
right. I mean, New York 12 is crazy, and I don't know if we can get more into this, but you have like elected officials. You have Jack Schlossberg. Did I say his name right?
I think so.
Who's JFK's grandson. You have George Conway, who might. Did you guys see this? George Conway might run for Congress. Yes, George Conway, who doesn't even live in New York. He's, for people who don't know who he is, he was Kellyanne Conway's husband.
Who's the Democrat? Kellyanne Conway is the former chief of staff under Trump.
And
won.
George Conway was, he was a very conservative attorney and Trump supporter, and then turned on Trump and has become one of Trump's most vocal critics, especially on social media.
Yep.
So like George Conway is now like held up as this like leader of the resistance against Donald Trump.
I hate a carpetbagger in New York.
Right. He lives in Bethesda, Maryland, and he's now apartment shopping in Manhattan because he wants to run for Congress. So that's going to make it for an even more interesting race. So that race is going to be wild. But Ossé,
12.
yes, that's a Manhattan district.
We'll
Let's
go to 12 after. Let's stick with 8.
Yes.
It is Congressional District 8. It swings from, where does it start? It's like Central Brooklyn.
Yeah, no, it's
like Bed-Stuy.
It's Bed-Stuy.
So like South Brooklyn.
And then it like swings around.
Yeah, she said
Doesn't it
Coney
also? I'm
Island.
trying to find the map.
Coney Island. It goes through like Canarsie and some of these like predominantly black Central Brooklyn neighborhoods, but then it swings down into like Brighton Beach and Sheepshead Bay,
And
which is
New York is in there as well.
right. So, but I mean, there's a pretty broad range in there, and if you look at the numbers, Mamdani won that district. I mean, he did better than Cuomo, but Hakeem Jeffries is going to be tough to beat. I mean, we think, right? I mean, first of all, he's one of the most prominent Democrats in the country. I mean, he's the House Democratic leader. He has
In line to be speaker should the Democrats win over the House next
he
year.
has access to millions and millions of dollars. I can't remember. I think he's sitting on like $7 million and can easily raise a lot more. And, he seems to be well liked in the districts. And Ossé is, he's young. He has he's popular in his district, certainly, but he's in
the
Bed-Stuy, which is a very, very left-leaning district. So I don't know if his popularity is going to translate district-wide, but
Bright Beach, I don't know how they're going to feel.
But like Ossé, I think he saw what Mamdani did, and he's like, I'm going to shoot my shot. Like, this is my chance. DSA is hot.
More than that, I think folks were very much disappointed in Hakeem Jeffries for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
I think, there's two different Hakeem Jeffries. There's like the national profile, and then there's how folks look at him in Brooklyn, particularly in the Bed-Stuy portion of the district. People were like very disappointed that he took so long to endorse Zohran Mamdani, and how and when he did it, he almost proved that he's not that big of a factor, right? Like Mamdani doesn't need you to win. Like you gave him probably the least enthusiastic endorsement as possible at the last minute you possibly could. But it didn't matter because he still won with 50% of the vote and did overwhelmingly well in a lot of areas of your district. Hakeem Jeffries has taken a lot of criticism over all the money that he's taken from AIPAC over the years. That has drawn him national criticism. There's that line from Charlemagne, the popular host of The Breakfast Club, calling him AIPAC Shakur, right? I think there are so many different ways in which Hakeem Jeffries has been focused on being a voice for Democrats nationally, and I don't know how in tune he is with the folks within his district and showing up. And I think Ossé knows how to show up and knows how to talk to the issues that people in the district care about. And Ossé is very, very young, but the fact that he got rid of the broker fee for people who rent New York City apartments, that's pretty impressive. His use of social media, I'm sure, is studied by political science students, social media professionals. He knows how to communicate. He is on the ground. And I will say this, and I promise I don't work for the Ossé campaign, but I do think he has a shot. When you look at the primary results in some parts of the district, so for example, East New York, right, which is considered very, very conservative. Andrew Cuomo did very, very well in East New York during the primary. But by the time we got to the general election, Zohran Mamdani was winning those same neighborhoods. I mean, the numbers nearly flipped. So I do think that there is some openness. I do think that New Yorkers understand and get what he's trying to work on nationally, but I don't know how in touch Hakeem Jeffries is with the district. Times have changed, politics have changed, and it seems like New Yorkers want that change, and Hakeem Jeffries is not associated with change at all.
I also think that there's criticism of him on the national level too. It's not necessarily just within the district. There are people who are disappointed with the way he has led Democrats on the national level, and that
not standing up to Trump.
Yeah, not being, I was going to say,
what happened with the shutdown, right? What did Democrats get after the government shutdown?
There's nothing. The Ossé is right that there is absolutely an opening here, and what it will also make Jeffries do is have to campaign in New York and have to actually work for the seat, which is perhaps not a welcome distraction for him, considering he's supposed to be focusing on the entire country and trying to win back the House. And that most likely is the reason why Zohran Mamdani showed up at a DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, meeting this week to encourage the DSA members to not endorse in this particular seat.
It's crazy. This is such a fascinating
line.
Well, just a line. I usually don't like to talk about private conversations, but I think it's fine. Ossé was one of the first people to talk to me about Zohran Mamdani and his run for mayor. And she was all in back in January. He's no,
he's the deal.
Watch him. He's the deal. This is it. So it's not just Ossé was, a supporter. He was probably at the top of the list in terms of people who didn't just, talk about him, but did the work of actually trying to help get him elected.
Right. And then, you fast forward a few months and they have this sort of falling out. Apparently, reportedly, I don't know this firsthand, but Mamdani behind the scenes tried to discourage Ossé from running. And then Ossé wasn't at his election night. It wasn't at Mamdani's election night party.
Yeah.
So then Mamdani goes to the DSA this week and says, don't endorse Ossé. It's crazy. But it just goes to show that Mamdani has had to pivot, right? Now that he's in power, he needs to partner with centrist Democrats, right? He needs people like Hakeem Jeffries. Maybe he didn't need him to get elected, but for him to enact his agenda, right, he needs a coalition. And for him to support this guy to try to knock out Hakeem Jeffries is probably not the smartest idea right now. So I think it makes sense what Mamdani is doing.
It is interesting, and we don't have that much time left, and I know you do want to talk about some of the other races, Bobby, because Mamdani was asked, was it this morning, whether or not he felt the same about some of the other races, i.e. New York 10.
Well, because Brad Lander is interested in running against Dan Goldman. I mean, this could be a whole other conversation, but again,
New York
reportedly...
is lower Manhattan through...
And a big chunk of Brooklyn.
I mean, Park Slope is like...
Yeah, like through a lot of Broadstone, Brooklyn.
Borough Park as well.
And Brad Lander is considering running, and reportedly behind the scenes, Mamdani has, signaled that he would support Lander in a primary against Congressman Dan Goldman. That's also complicated by the fact that Alexa Aviles, the Brooklyn City Councilwoman, is running, and she has support from DSA. So that's going to be another really interesting primary. Maybe one of them drops out and supports the other.
Yeah.
But yes, Mamdani was asked today, well, you don't want Chiose to run against Hakeem. Why are you then maybe supporting Brad Lander against Goldman? And he just kind of avoided the question and said that what happened last night at the DSA was specific to this particular situation. So, things are already getting kind of hairy politically for Mamdani. And with the DSA, DSA has basically said, Mamdani's argument is what we should be doing for the next year is not spending political capital on all these primary challenges. We should be trying to enact this affordability agenda.
Yeah.
So, that's what happens when you actually get in power. It's like...
But wouldn't primary challenges give you more partners to help enact the affordability agenda?
If you win.
Yeah.
But I think, he feels like we won. We have a chance to actually enact our agenda. I won. We won. I don't know. But is the DSA again? Our DSA members going to start to turn on him now that he's not totally aligned with their priorities, or at least with some of the candidates that they want to endorse. But we'll see if Chiose even gets the endorsement. If he doesn't get endorsed by DSA, maybe he doesn't run after all.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good place to stop. We have to tell...
I was trying to give you a good kicker.
I know. We didn't talk that much about New York 12, but I think we're going to have to talk about the midterms so much in the coming months. We'll give you a break for now. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Our dear listeners and our dear YouTube watchers, we are not going to be here next week for the Thanksgiving holiday. We hope you all have a good holiday if you celebrate such things. But you can always watch us on Inside City Hall on Monday. On weeknights, you can send us your feedback at yourstorynewyork1@charter.com. You can subscribe to Off Topic wherever you get your podcast. And if you like what you're hearing, leave a review. Thanks to our producer, Anthony Roman. And we will see you in 2 weeks.